The FBI officers were stunned. Alcatraz was a prison so secure that even if a prisoner were left unguarded, escape was still considered impossible. Yet, 3 inmates had vanished right under the noses of the authorities without a single alarm being raised. The most astonishing fact? For the next 10 hours, no one even realized they were gone. This wasn't just a case for the FBI. 3 of the top investigative agencies in the United States were deployed to solve this baffling mystery. What unfolded was not just an ordinary jailbreak, it became a legend, a case that has remained unsolved for over 60 years, continuing to captivate minds worldwide. Located in the treacherous waters of the Pacific Ocean, Alcatraz was more than just a prison, it was a fortress of despair. Spread over just 22 acres, this small yet formidable island housed some of the most dangerous criminals in history. Known as the Rock, Alcatraz was built on a massive stone foundation, making it nearly impenetrable. The island itself was its own natural prison, surrounded by the frigid, relentless waters of the Pacific. To add to its defenses, a 15-foot high perimeter fence encased the facility, and armed guards patrolled 24/7. On top of that, the prison's location at the mouth of the Pacific meant it was constantly battered by powerful winds and unpredictable waves, making any escape attempt seem suicidal. In 1934, it was officially declared a federal prison, boasting the highest level of security of its time. The message was clear: once inside, escape was out of the question. But on June 11, 1962, history was rewritten. The legend of Alcatraz's inescapability was shattered forever when 3 men pulled off one of the most daring and mysterious prison breaks the world has ever seen. The main characters of this incredible story are 4 men, each with a history of crime and incarceration. First, there were John William Anglin and Clarence Anglin, brothers who were imprisoned for bank robbery. Then came Frank Morris, a man with a long criminal past. Having been in and out of prison since the age of 13, he too had landed in Alcatraz for bank robbery. Lastly, there was Allen West, a habitual escape artist who had repeatedly attempted to break free from other prisons. His relentless escape attempts led authorities to send him to Alcatraz, a place known for maximum security and 0 chances of escape. Unlike the others, Allen West had been in Alcatraz for a long time. Over the years, he had learned every detail of the prison compound, giving him an advantage no other inmate had. It was Allen West who first came up with the idea of escaping from Alcatraz in 1960, sharing his plan with his fellow inmates. West had discovered a hidden maintenance corridor behind Block B, a potential weak point in the prison's otherwise impenetrable structure. However, there was one major problem: none of them were housed in Block B. Since the 4 men could only meet briefly during lunch breaks and work shifts, they needed to be closer to turn their escape plan into reality. Determined to relocate, the group persistently tried to get transferred to Block B, and luck was on their side. The prison warden unknowingly fulfilled their request, assigning all 4 men to neighboring cells in Block B. Their first goal had been accomplished. But what happened next was even more astonishing. For the next 2 years, these 4 prisoners quietly worked inside their cells, unnoticed by guards, planning and executing one of the most daring escapes in history. No one had the slightest clue about this secret operation unfolding right under their noses. On the morning of June 12, 1962, at exactly 7 a.m., the Alcatraz prison staff followed their usual routine, waking up the inmates and conducting the morning roll call. But this time, something was terribly wrong. As the guards counted the prisoners in the assembly, they noticed that 3 inmates were missing. When they rushed back to inspect their cells, they saw Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers seemingly asleep in their beds. Something felt off. Suspicious, the guards stepped inside and attempted to wake them. What happened next left them stunned. As soon as they touched the prisoners, one of their heads rolled off the bed and shattered on the floor. It wasn't real. It was a dummy head, carefully crafted from soap, plaster, and concrete, with real human hair taken from the prison's barbershop. Panic spread through the prison like wildfire. The entire staff was in shock. How had 3 prisoners managed to escape from the most secure prison in the world? Realizing that there was no way they could have left the island unnoticed, the authorities searched every inch of Alcatraz, but there was no trace of them, no footprints, no signs of their whereabouts, nothing. However, amid the chaos, one major detail stood out. One of the masterminds behind the plan, Allen West, was still inside his cell. It didn't take long for the FBI and other investigative teams to be called in. As they inspected the escape route, they found something even more surprising. The prisoners had dug through the air vents at the back of their cells. But instead of just 3 damaged walls, there were 4. Yes, Allen West had attempted to escape too, but he had failed. For some reason, his hole wasn't big enough for him to squeeze through, and by the time he was ready, his accomplices had already left. Realizing he had no other choice, Allen came clean to investigators. He confessed that the entire plan was his idea. He explained how he had crafted the dummy heads, how they had dug through the weak spots in their cells, and how he had discovered the escape route while working maintenance inside the prison. The walls of the cells were only 6 inches thick, and Allen knew they could chip away at the vent openings to make them large enough to crawl through. But while the others succeeded, he was left behind, alone, and trapped. For 6 months, the 4 prisoners patiently and secretly dug through the vent openings in their cells. Their tools? Ordinary kitchen spoons stolen from the prison kitchen. But as time went on, they needed something more powerful. Using sheer ingenuity, they converted the motor from a prison vacuum cleaner into a makeshift drill to speed up the process. To ensure their work remained undetected, they carefully hid the holes behind musical instruments or personal belongings. The digging was done mostly during music hour, when the prison was filled with noise, allowing them to chip away at the vents without arousing suspicion. Their escape route led to an unguarded maintenance corridor, a hidden passageway that connected to a drain pipe. This pipe ran straight to the roof of their block, a place they were already familiar with from their maintenance duties. At Alcatraz, prisoners were often assigned to maintenance work as part of their daily routine. Taking full advantage of this, the 4 men carefully studied every detail of the prison structure, searching for weaknesses and planning their next move. From the rooftop, they lowered themselves down a 15-foot high perimeter fence using another pipe. But their plan didn't end there. They had already prepared for the final and most dangerous part of their escape, the ocean, the raft and life jackets. The prisoners knew the treacherous waters surrounding Alcatraz were their biggest obstacle. To survive, they stitched together a makeshift raft using stolen rubber raincoats, carefully sealing the edges to make it inflatable. They also fashioned life jackets from the same material as a backup in case the raft failed. These raincoats were issued by the prison itself, and over time, the inmates collected them by making excuses to get replacements. By the time of their escape, they had gathered enough material to construct a fully functional raft. Everything was ready. Their plan was in motion, but the biggest mystery remained. Where did they go after escaping? The FBI's investigation and Allen West's confession. Left behind in his cell, Allen West had no choice but to confess. According to him, the plan was to row from Alcatraz to Angel Island, located north of the prison. From there, they would cross to the mainland in the quiet town where security was minimal. Their final step was to steal a car and some clothes before disappearing. But the FBI found a strange contradiction. They searched the entire coastline, nearby islands, and even inland areas, yet no reports of stolen cars or missing clothing were found. Had they made it to safety, or had the merciless ocean claimed them forever? The proof left behind. While there were no clear answers, investigators did find traces of the escapees' movements. Footprints on the rooftop of Block B indicated where the prisoners had worked on their escape. Additionally, marks on the pipes confirmed their descent from the roof to the fence. One thing was certain, Allen West's story wasn't a lie. The escape had happened. But as for what happened to the other 3 men, the world may never know. With the FBI, Coast Guard, Bureau of Prisons, and U.S. Marshals Service all involved, the search for the escaped prisoners became one of the most extensive manhunts in American history. Authorities scoured the surrounding waters, expecting to find some trace of the fugitives. But despite days of relentless searching, there was no sign of the prisoners, no raft, and no bodies. However, 4 days later, the Coast Guard discovered a wooden paddle floating in the bay, believed to be part of the makeshift raft the inmates had built. Soon after, 2 waterproof bags made from raincoats were recovered. Inside, investigators found personal belongings, family photographs, letters, and keepsakes. This discovery raised a chilling question. If the prisoners had successfully escaped, why would they leave behind their most treasured possessions? The absence of bodies only deepened the mystery. Typically, a drowned body would surface within 2 days, yet for months, no remains were found. Did they survive? The theories and sightings. One popular theory suggests that even if the raft failed, the prisoners might have swum to shore. The FBI placed the Anglin brothers' family under strict surveillance, believing they might eventually make contact. Years later, David Widner, the Anglins' nephew, claimed that before his death, their elder brother confessed that John and Clarence were alive and had stayed in touch with the family. Some relatives even told investigators that during family gatherings, 2 mysterious women in heavy makeup were seen. Many suspected they were actually John and Clarence in disguise, but after that, the figures were never spotted again. The most shocking claim surfaced 15 years after the escape. A cousin of the Anglin brothers reported seeing them in a club in Brazil, and even managed to capture a photograph of them. Their family firmly believed the men in the picture were John and Clarence. However, the U.S. Marshals Service remained skeptical, stating that the facial features didn't match the real Anglin brothers. This was the last possible sighting of them. After that, the trail went cold. The fate of Alcatraz and the final investigation. Just a year after the escape, in 1963, Alcatraz was permanently shut down, its reputation as an inescapable prison shattered. In 1979, the FBI officially closed the case, though the U.S. Marshals Service still considers it open. The search for Frank Morris, John Anglin, and Clarence Anglin will remain active until their capture, the discovery of their bodies, or until they would have turned 99 years old, whichever comes first. Alcatraz today, a prison turned tourist attraction. Today, Alcatraz Island is a national park, attracting thousands of visitors who walk through the same cold, steel-barred halls of Block B, where the Anglin brothers, Frank Morris and Alan West, once plotted the most famous prison break in history. 60 years later, the question remains: did they drown in the cold waters of the Pacific, or did they pull off the greatest escape of all time?